better machines, skilled hands, and newer techniques. Our department began in 1958-59 with basic operation theatres and steadily progressed to complex surgery in modular OTs. Key milestones include the first open heart surgery in 1986. In 2002, pain clinic was started. The first liver transplant was done in 2017. In the same year, long-awaited phase outdoor was started. And recently, robotic surgery started in the year 2023. This reflects the continuous growth of our department in supporting advanced surgical procedures. Over the years, our department has witnessed remarkable growth in the number of OTs, faculty strength, and resident training capacity. Although the number of tables and faculty has increased, the increase in staff strength remains inadequate for the growing workload, leading to frequent manpower constraints. The department functions with the support of an anesthesia team led by senior faculty and supported by experienced medical officers and senior residents. Today, the Department of Anesthesia provides safe care at 30 locations, managing more than 100 OT tables across all major specialties at SFM Medical College. On an average, 350 surgical procedures are performed per day with anesthesia services forming the backbone that enables these surgeries to be performed safely and efficiently. These are various OT complexes where we serve. These are super specialty OT complexes where we provide anesthesia. Advanced surgeries across these OTs are powered by dynamic and continuously evolving anesthesia services. These emergency operation theatres run round the clock across SMS and its affiliated hospitals, ensuring that every emergency procedure is managed with the utmost care and precision. Day or night, anesthesiologists remain at the forefront of emergency care. We maintain continuous emergency coverage with one consultant on floor at the SRO hospital and one at the trauma hospital, and approximately 50 residents on duty across the emergency floors of all attached hospitals, along with many faculties on call duty. The medical ICU and trauma emergency are areas where our residents remain on constant alert on toes every single moment. We attend emergency calls for various procedures across the hospital. We provide non-operating room anesthesia at various sites like cath lab, ERCP, CT MRI, and intervention radiology. The pre-anesthetic checkup clinic is central to perioperative optimization with 120 to 140 PSCs per day. Apart from this, nearly 80 bedside PSCs are done in cardiac, neuro, trauma, and urology, and 90 to 100 PSCs are done in attached group of hospitals. We play a critical role in mass casualty situations, providing rapid stabilization, airway management, and perioperative care to optimize patient outcomes. Numbers measure our quantity, but the quality of our work is written in lives. A stable, calm, comfortable, and pain-free patient remains our greatest achievement. Surgery patients require strong teamwork between anesthesia and surgery. Advances in anesthesia have made most complex surgical procedures possible. We are using these advanced modern technologies in our department. With these modern upgradation, we have definitely taken our department to the next level. In the plastic surgery OT, difficult airway cases are frequently encountered. We are performing blind nasal intubation, fiber optic intubation, and laryngoscope assisted intubation for airway management. In the orthopedics OT, a wide range of cases are managed daily, and both pediatric and geriatric anesthesia is routinely practiced here. Recently, scoliosis surgeries have been started, which require expert anesthetic management and including total intravenous anesthesia and intraoperative monitoring of motor and sensory evoked potential to prevent any nerve injuries in these patients. Few years ago, we successfully conducted hip prosthesis surgery on the world's oldest patient, Habib Mia, 137 years old, as recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. Another geriatric case involved a 112-year-old patient who was successfully operated on for femur surgery. In hand surgery OT, most of the surgeries are done under regional anesthesia, which includes mainly different approaches of USG guided brachial plexus block. In general surgery OT, we provide anesthesia for open to complex abdominal laparoscopic surgeries. Advanced robotic surgeries introduced in 2023 are extremely challenging because of the extreme position and limited access to the patient once the robot is docked. Bariatric surgery is performed in the gastrosurgery OT and general surgery OT, and it presents significant anesthetic challenges. Coincidental surgery in obese patients, morbidly obese patients, is also very challenging, but our department meets these challenges with unwavering excellence. From regular spinal anesthesia, we have grown towards thoracic segmental spinal anesthesia. It allows precise targeted anesthesia for thoracic and upper abdominal surgeries. Trauma OT is one of the most difficult areas with most critical movements. Trauma anesthesia involves precision in chaos, where rapid resuscitation and precision can make the difference between life and death. Neurosurgical trauma patients require immediate surgical intervention. We are glad that our expert trauma team provides life-saving care in these moments to ensure stability and safety for every trauma patient. In trauma patients, there is minimal time to optimize patients with multiple comorbidities, hence most of the orthopedics procedures are performed in regional anesthesia. One resident is posted in round the clock in the trauma emergency to manage polytrauma cases requiring airway control, resuscitation, and other emergency procedures. In the ENT OT, we handle a wide range of cases, from foreign body bronchus to cochlear implant surgeries and macrolaryngeal surgeries. Laser airway procedures need specialized anesthetic techniques, and EMG endotracheal tubes in cardiac surgery help to prevent iatrogenic nerve injuries. In IoT, we deal with extremes of age from newborn to elderly. Here, most procedures are performed under local anesthesia, but being on standby itself is a significant responsibility for us. Janana Hospital and Mahila Chikitsalaya stand as pillars of safe motherhood, with nearly 60 to 70 cesareans every day, along with contributions from Kahotia and Bengali. Maternal and fetal outcomes in obstetric emergencies are strongly influenced by the preparedness and expertise of the anesthetist. In gynecology setup, we provide anesthesia from daycare surgeries to complex abdominal surgeries. First heart transplant was done in the year 2020, and anesthetic challenges were dealt efficiently by our expert team. Various cardiac procedures such as beating heart surgery involve minute-to-minute hemodynamic changes. These demand exceptional vigilance and precision. Thoracic surgery is requiring one lung ventilation are routinely performed in CTOT. The gastrosurgery and liver transplant OT is equipped with highly advanced instruments, and many complex GI and hepatobiliary surgeries are performed here routinely. Liver transplant anesthesia is the pinnacle of anesthetic challenge. Till now, 2 live liver transplants and 15 cadaver liver transplants have been done in gastro and gastroenterology. This shows one of a proud moment when a recipient of a diseased donor liver transplant was ready for discharge from the hospital. Neonatal and pediatric anesthesia is one of the toughest entities. Our tiny patients are delicate and demand the utmost care and precision. Shown here is a case of epicardial patient in a 25 days old under anesthesia. Anesthetic vigilance is key to the success of this surgery. The neurosurgery OT handles a wide spectrum of cases. Awake craniotomy and neurointervention radiology has its own distinct anesthetic challenges. Cerebral oximetry is used in various intracranial surgeries. Many times, posterior fossa surgeries are operated on in the sitting position, which carries a high risk of venous air embolism. Therefore, we need to be extremely vigilant throughout the procedure. In pediatric neurosurgery, we face the unique challenge of managing both the delicate physiology of children and the intricacies of neuroanesthesia. In urology, various procedures like PCNL, physiotherapy, and renal transplant are conducted routinely. Urological patients are often elderly and commonly have multiple comorbidities. A robotic renal transplant was recently conducted in the urology OT. It was first in North India in a government institute. Now we have separate state cancer institute where complex head and neck and abdominal oncosurgical procedures are routinely performed. We have a very important role in brain dead donor optimization and throughout the organ transplantation process. Till now, we have handled 36 organ donations. Since 2002, our pain clinic is delivering targeted, minimally invasive pain procedures with compassionate care. These are various procedures performed in pain OT. Medical ICU is the area where we provide round-the-clock advanced critical care, simultaneously attending calls from various other ICUs. These are various procedures done on ICU to improve outcome in critically ill patients. Let us not forget the pandemic COVID-19. From the first patient in medical ICU to the ICU beds filling up, from SMS to RUHS, from oxygen masks to ventilators, from COVID to mucormycosis, from the first wave to vaccination, we were there every step, every breath as frontline warriors. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the vital role of anesthesiologists, which is often unseen, was brought to the global attention and credited by Time magazine. These are the attached hospitals where we serve, including RUHS. With the same dedication and commitment, we are moving ahead and opening new horizons. Recently, one more new area has been added where anesthesia support is required: pediatric cardiac surgery OT in J. K. Long. HIPEC surgery in oncosurgery is the most recent new procedure performed under anesthesia for the first time in our institute. Now coming to the achievements of our department. Respected Dr. Maya Tandon ma'am, our retired professor, head of the department, and ex-MS J.K. Lal received the Padma Shri Award this year for training laypersons, first responders in the emergency medical care and road safety. It is a very proud achievement for our institution and for all of us. These are our faculties who have received various fellowships. Through the years, our faculty have not only been clinicians and teachers, but also exemplary administrators and leaders. Our faculty members are nationally recognized figures holding key responsibilities in esteemed societies such as RSA, JSA, SNAC, and many more. We have more than 295 research papers in our credit, and few chapters are written in books by our faculties. We take pride in providing CPR training to other departments and institutions, helping more people to gain skills to save lives. These are various conferences conducted by our department over the past few years. These are various CMEs and workshops. This shows our library and seminar hall where we conduct classes 6 days in a week with 2 classes conducted per batch, which includes regular seminars and journal clubs, case presentation, and guest lecture for postgraduate students. Year after year, our residents elevate the department's legacy, securing around more than 15 awards at national and state level. Every year, 12 to 15 residents successfully secure selection for super specialty. These are proud moments of year 2025. Every year, we celebrate World Anesthesia Day on 16th October. These are the glimpses of World Anesthesia Day celebration in our department. In 2025, we conducted CPR Awareness Week on World Anesthesia Day and performed these all activities. Following are the acknowledgements highlighted in the media. Now coming to the vision for future. We aim to carry forward our legacy with continued dedication and commitment. Our plans include expanding CPR training through compression-only life support programs for non-medical staff and institute personnel with administrative support for space and resources. Regarding this, our MS, Dr. Manal has already talked. Proposals for PDCC and fellowships in cardiac, regional and trauma anesthesia have been submitted and are awaiting approval. We also plan to initiate on-arrival block service in the emergency department to ensure early pain relief. Although, along with clinical growth, we are committed to strengthening our research culture and promoting high-quality publication. In the end, we would like to acknowledge and thank the Principal Sir, MSR, and all administrative authorities for their continued support and resource facilitation, which have been instrumental in expanding our services. I would also like to convey my special thanks to our young and talented professor, Dr. Neil Sharma, and our dedicated and hardworking resident, Dr. Divya, for their sincere efforts and invaluable support in preparing this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That indeed was concise, but the department is huge. We have been joined now by the motivation and dedication behind the initiation and conduction of every CPC, Dr. Puneet Saxena, sir, the convener of CPC.
And I welcome you in the new year. Apologies for being late. I met a minor accident in the morning while on the way. So, but I could escape the site and reach here finally. So we heard about the legendary department of anesthesia, and no clinical department in SMS Medical College and Hospital is working without the support of, they are probably the spine, not only the operating room, but we have seen the outside operating room also nowadays. So we sincerely appreciate the largest department, probably the clinical department of the college. And normally we have been presenting the clinical cases in the CPC. And anesthesia people also deal with so much of clinical material. But today we had a discussion with Madam Kalra, and they were of opinion that they want to present about the organ transplant. So they have chosen a case for organ transplantation, which in real sense would not fit into CPC, but is of much more clinical importance and importance to the institute, because we want to push that program also. So they have taken a recent case which is very interesting, and we'll see that how it has been intricately managed by the anesthesia people also at every step to facilitate all the organ transplantation. Thank you very much.
Much ado, I now invite Dr. Anupama Gupta ma'am, Senior Professor, Department of Anesthesia, to begin the case.
The brain has fallen silent. The anesthesiologist's role is to ensure that the body does not feel. And our responsibility shifts from cure to care through constant vigilance, clinical expertise, and compassion. We maintain physiological stability so that the loss of one life may become hope for many others. Accepting brain death is profoundly difficult for families, as the heart still beats and the body appears alive. In this emotionally charged period, anesthesiologist stands at the center of care, managing the narrow window between the brain death declaration and organ retrieval. This phase demands meticulous hemodynamic, respiratory, and metabolic optimization to preserve the organ viability while coordinating seamlessly with multiple transplant teams within strict ethical and legal frameworks. Beyond technical excellence, anesthesiologist plays a key role in supporting empathetic communication with grieving families, helping safeguard trust and uphold the true intent of organ donation. At the SMS Medical College, a department of anesthesiology leads the process from brain death declaration, certification, and protocol-based donor optimization under THOTA guidelines, maintaining viability of organ till safe retrieval process and transplant surgeries. Today's CPC presents one such case where a silent ending became a new beginning for many. Now I invite Dr. Ugam Singh.
Good morning, everyone. Today I will present the clinical history of a 18-year-old male who was organ donor warrior. He met with the accident on 25th August 2025 near Jaipur. He becomes unconscious at the site of trauma and was directly brought to SMS Trauma Center, where in emergency he was managed by emergency team as per ATLS protocol. His airway was compromised, so he was intubated, and the breathing support was done by mechanical ventilation, and circulation was stabilized. After initial stabilization, patient was shifted for CT scan brain, and the CT scan brain shows small left frontal contusion without any mass effect and midline shift. So the CT findings was inadequate to explain the patient GCS status. So the diagnosis of diffuse brain axonal injury was suspected, and the treatment was started as there was no operable intracranial lesion. The decision for non-operative medical management was done, and with close neurosurgical monitoring, the patient was then shifted to neurotrauma ICU, where patient was managed with mechanical ventilation, and supportive management was done with head and elevation. Hemodynamic stabilization was done along with osmotherapy. Despite of all efforts, the patient was progressively declining. In the neurological status, the patient GCS become M1 with loss of all purposeful movements, and there was persistent absence of brainstem reflexes. So the neurology consultation and anesthesia consultation was done to assess the brain death as per protocol to ensure the multidisciplinary confirmation before the certification. So the next examination, neurological examination, will be done by Dr. Deepak Jain. So I call Dr. Deepak Jain sir for neurological examination before brain death examination certification. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ugam. Good morning, everyone. I am here to discuss neurological examination of patient Rohan for brainstem death certification. So before starting examination, we excluded all confounding factors, including intoxication, drugs, muscle relaxants, primary hypothermia, hypovolemic shock, metabolic and endocrine disorders. Hypernatremia and diabetes insipidus are more often the effect rather than the cause because of the suppression of hypothalamic pituitary axis. So patient was in coma state. There was no response to external and internal stimuli. Cessation of spontaneous breathing was present. Pupils were bilaterally dilated and light reflex was absent. So it suggests involvement of second cranial nerve and third cranial nerve with nucleus in midbrain. Corneal reflex was also absent, suggestive of trigeminal and facial nerve dysfunction with pontine nuclei involvement. There was no motor response in any cranial nerve distribution, including trigeminal and facial nerve. Then we tested gag and tracheal reflex by stimulating posterior pharynx and suctioning the endotracheal tube at the level of carina. So both were absent, suggestive of involvement of glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve and nucleus in medulla. Then we tested vestibulo-ocular response, including Dawes-Eye maneuver and cold caloric test stimulation. In Dawes-Eye maneuver, we turned the head to one side and there was no response, no eye movements observed. And also cold calorie test was also absent. In this test, we kept the head position 30 degrees to the horizontal to keep horizontal semicircular canals in vertical position for optimization or for more stimulation of that semicircular canal. Then minimum of 50 cc of cold water irrigated into the ear canal. We used ice cold water for this and it stimulates the vestibular nerve, then third cranial nerve and sixth cranial nerve. So there was no response for at least 1 minute and we checked other side after 5 minutes. Some observations may be compatible with brain death, including sweating, blushing, deep tendon reflexes, spontaneous spinal reflexes, including triple flexion, having flexion at hip joint, knee joint and ankle joint, and also Babinski sign. These are present maybe due to the preserved spinal reflexes in a patient of brainstem death. And ancillary tests like cerebral angiography and EEG were not performed, as these tests are not mandatory for brainstem death examination. Brainstem death equates to the brain dead and diagnosis is primarily clinical. So these tests may be useful in certain situations, like when we could not be able to do certain brainstem reflex tests like Dawes-Eye maneuver in cervical spine unstable patients or like cold calorie test in eardrum rupture patients. This is the form number 8 for this brainstem death declaration. It includes details of patient details, the board members detail and the findings of brainstem death examination with timing of the examination. So all these tests were found to be absent in patient Rohan. The patient was handed over to the optimization team after performing 2 neurological examination 8 hours above. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. Chitra to proceed further.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. So as soon as we received a call from the nodal officer, we wheeled the patient from the emergency to a dedicated bed number 16 in polytrauma ICU. The patient was on antibiotics which were upgraded to TG-cycline and polymyxin. He was on anticonvulsants which was stopped and was on enoxaparin because he had shaft of femur which was stopped later on. The shifting vitals record a heart rate of 108 per minute and a blood pressure of 101 by 70 mm of Hg, on noradrenaline at 25 ml per hour and on dopamine of 5 ml per hour. The ventilators were set on volume control mode. So, what the signs and symptoms are anticipated as the brain meets an insult. The ischemic insults proceeds in rostrocaudal directions, and the signs and symptoms are mirror image of the same. In order to save time, we anticipate what is about to come and treat the patient accordingly. So for that, as the injury proceeds in the rostral direction, that is on the hypothalamus, there is an HPA axis suppression, which is of importance. Similarly, when the insult goes to the level of pons, the sympathetic as well as parasympathetic stimulation is there, which we see as bradycardia and hypertension. Over the medulla, there is severe hypertension to the level of 260 to 270 mmHg, and even up to 300 mm of BP has been recorded, along with arrhythmias and hyperthermia. This is known as cytokinin storm, and this is because of inflammatory markers. So as we receive the patient, in order to suppress this, we give 15 mg per kg of methylprednisolone. After this, the insult proceeds to the spinal cord, leading to hypotension. So there can be a penumbra of signs and symptoms, including hypotension, DIC, hypothermia, cardiac arrhythmias, metabolic acidosis, HPA suppression, pulmonary edema, arrhythmias, autonomic storm, and many other. So depending on what are the complications we receive, we proceed as per our goals, which are set by the guidelines. This patient presented broadly with diabetes insipidus, hypotension and hypothermia. As we received the patient, we changed all the lines under full aseptic conditions, and we inserted a central line under full asepsis in order to prevent any cysts or inflammatory or infections. The diabetes insipidus presents with rising sodium levels, increased serum osmolarity, and a urine output which is often more than 200 ml per hour. And for the same, as because it's a vasogenic shock and ADH is not secreted, because the posterior pituitary having a direct supply from the internal carotid artery, which is extradural in origin, so it meets a direct insult, and that leads to rise in sodium. So we supplemented with vasopressin, which was titrated from 0.5 to 2 units per hour. Along with the management was with free fluid, that is neutralizing D5, along with through Ryle's tube, and intravascular volume was maintained, and the sodium was tried to get within the normal limits in another 2 to 3 days. In order to maintain the intracellular and extracellular balance, 30 ml per hour of normal saline was started with infusion pump. So hypotension could be distributive as well as hypovolumic. It can be due to cysts and it can be vasogenic. Depending on the etiology, it is treated, and in this patient, over a period of time, we were able to stop dopamine and decrease noradrenaline to 10 units per hour. Hypothermia was managed with active measures, and the general ICU protocols as hand hygiene, chest ARDS protocol, cleaning of the patient, chest physiotherapy, suction, oral hygiene, all were placed accordingly. The ventilation was as per ARDS protocol, along with recruitment maneuvers when and where required. They were done post apnea, especially in order to maintain oxygenation of the patient. Fluid and metabolic parameters were maintained within normal limits. The monitoring includes, besides the standard monitoring, organ-specific monitoring. Hypothermia was maintained, temperature was monitored, and temperatures were maintained between 37 to 38 degrees centigrade. Blood sugars were maintained, and electrolytes were monitored morning, evening, and maintained within normal limits. So the management goals includes the following, along with adequate perfusion to the transplantation organs. Oxygenation was maintained, the normal physiology of patient was maintained, hemostasis was maintained. Any secondary complication, if it was timely monitored, targeted and maintained. Hemodynamic parameters and ABG were maintained within normal limits and ARDS protocol was followed. Once 2 neurological examinations were done and they came to be positive and the patient was optimized in terms of oxygen and perfusion to the transplanted organs, we proceeded for apnea. The prerequisites remained the same as the confounding factors were ruled out, which were mentioned by Dr. Deepak Jain. After this, we proceeded for performing an apnea. Before performing the apnea, we put the patient to 100% of oxygenation and we take a pre-apnea ABG. This ABG should report a PO2 of more than 200 mm of Hg, and this patient reported somewhere around 327 mm of Hg. Hence, we plan to proceed for apnea. The other parameters of ABG were compatible with life. After this, we disconnected the patient from the ventilator and put him to a suction catheter at the level of carina, connected it to 6 liters of oxygen, and for next 10 minutes, all the parameters were recorded and any movement, respiratory movement or any other movements were put into the picture, and the whole thing aimed at the patient should not collapse in between. After 10 minutes, another ABG was withdrawn, which was known as post-apnea ABG. The test was concluded positive because the difference in PaCO2 of pre-apnea and post-apnea ABG reported to be 47.3 mm of Hg. 2 such tests were conducted in order to declare the patient as brain dead. So before proceeding to this slide, I'll be thankful to all the departments who helped in the process of optimization, especially the physicians, the microbiologist, pathologist, endocrinology and all others have to be, because we generally, whenever we are in a problem, we give them a call and they are all at a helping hand to get this program run. The steps in brain death includes, as per the Doha Act 1994, it is a committee of 4 members which are sanctioned by the Directorate Medical Education, and it consists of 4 members. At our center, it is anesthesiologist, neurosurgeon, neurologist and medical superintendent. Before this, another form, which is an organ status form, is signed by the physician, and they declare that the organs are in a state to be transplanted into the recipient. Once we have described that what is the etiology of irreversible coma, in this patient it was diffuse axonal injury. Following this, 2 neurological examinations have to be conducted with minimum 6 hours apart, and both of them have to be absent for any brain stem nerve reflexes. So that was also there. And the third are 2 apnea to be performed minimum 6 hours apart in a young adult patient. He was 18 years. So the apnea were conducted 6 hours apart, that is 8 hours apart, and both the apnea concluded as positive. Following this checklist of brain death certification, all the 4 members signed the brain death certificate and the patient was declared as brain dead. After this, a call was given to the grief counseling team to conduct the sessions of counseling. For this, I invite Dr. Gunjan, Professor in Department of Psychiatry. So we were called upon by Department of Anesthesia for grief counseling with the final goal of organ donation. So we divided it into certain sessions. So in the first session, as the treating doctor had already spoken to parents, the father about who was a farmer and the mother who was a homemaker. So they were already described about brain death and the procedures. Then we in the first session conveyed them about the irreversible nature of the brain death and that there was no coming back of life from this point. In the next 2 second and third session, they were like, we actually identified the nodal person from the family who could actually take decision about the organ donation, and we asked the family if they have ever heard about any sort of donations like eye donation and blood donation, because they are common. Then they were actually aware of blood donation, but were not aware about organ donation. Then we spoke them about donating other organs apart from blood donation, which they were about which they were already aware of. They were aware of because someone in their family has donated blood in the camps. Then in the final session, we explained them that their son can save the lives of many needy people rather than being just returned to the earth. We left the family alone to discuss and make up their minds after making sure that they understood that they were under no compulsion to donate, that even if they deny about donating, the care that they were given would not be withheld. Then when we met the family again, they said that they would donate his organs, that is his liver and 2 kidneys, because they felt that he would live on through his organs. This is what was done in sessions. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Dharmesh. He is professor in Department of Preventive and Social Medicine, and he is also seeing SOT.
After a lot of effort of counseling, the family give positive consent for both kidney and liver. As per state allocation policy, we allocated both kidney to SMS hospital, one kidney as per donor hospital and second kidney as government pool. Liver is also allocated to SMS hospital as a donor hospital. As per our state guideline of allocation, first preference to donor hospital, then in government pool and then in private pool. So both kidney and liver are allocated to SMS Medical College and Hospital. Now I am inviting Dr. Kanchan Chauhan ma'am for organ retrieval.
Thank you, Dr. Dharmesh. Good morning, everybody. Myself, Dr. Kanchan Chauhan, Senior Professor Anesthesia. The patient was shifted from trauma ICU to retrieval OT in Dhanvantri block, accompanied by consultant anesthesiologist and team with infusion pump, portable ventilator with adequate battery backup and emergency drugs in fully equipped ambulance. Monitoring during transit included continuous pulse oximetry, ECG, and invasive blood pressure monitoring. It was ensured that the silent guardian role remained active during the vulnerable transit period. Role of anesthesiologist during retrieval includes continuing ICU care into OT, maintaining hemodynamic stability, maintaining cellular oxygenation, ensuring optimal donor organ perfusion, ensuring coordination with surgical team to optimize donor physiology for the best possible graft outcome, and ensuring respectful environment in the OR. On receiving patient in retrieval OT, consent, MLC formalities and investigations were checked. Patient was connected to ventilator. Standard ASA monitoring was established and ABG sample was sent. Vitals were recorded as heart rate 98 per minute, blood pressure 118/68, on support noradrenaline 10 ml per hour and vasopressin 2 ml per hour. Patency of neck line and arterial line in situ was checked. Management in the operation theatre included invasive cardiac output monitor to assess the real-time hemodynamic monitoring and to guide fluid management. Normothermia was maintained using warming blankets and fluid warmers until the cold perfusion phase began. Goals of anesthesia: the rule of hundreds was followed. Systolic blood pressure was maintained more than 100 millimeters of mercury, urine output more than 100 ml per hour, PaO2 more than 100 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin more than 10 gram per deciliter, and blood sugar was maintained between 100 and 180 milligram per deciliter. Intraoperative physiological support was provided by drugs like fentanyl, 1 microgram per kilogram IV, relaxant atracurium 0.5 milligram per kilogram IV, and inhalational agent sevoflurane to prevent spinal reflexes, Lazarus sign, during the surgical incision. Methylprednisolone 1 gram IV and antibiotics were given. Balanced salt solutions were preferred over hydroxyethyl starches to avoid graft injury. Frequent ABG monitoring was done to correct hypernatremia and maintain normal potassium levels. The retrieval phase, the final steps were administration of systemic heparin as requested by the surgical team prior to cross-clamping. All anesthetic support and ventilation was discontinued only after the aorta was cross-clamped and the cold preservative solution began. Donor family consented to donate kidney and liver. However, other organs like heart, lungs, pancreas and intestines, along with tissues like cornea, skin, bone, heart valves, tendons and blood vessels are commonly transplanted to replace failing or damaged parts, saving and improving lives by restoring function and quality of life. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. Siddharth Sharma to carry forward.
Good morning, everyone. The liver recipient was a 46-year-old male with BMI of 23.6 kilogram per meter square and was admitted in the Department of Hepatobiliary Surgery with diagnosis of alcohol-related chronic liver disease with portal hypertension, non-bleeding esophageal varices grade 2, ascites, jaundice and hepatic encephalopathy. His MELD sodium score was 19 and child Cook score was 9. These scores give indication about the severity of the disease and urgency of liver transplant surgery. Patient was registered for disease donor liver transplantation in January 2025 and was under regular follow-up for optimization. Marked multisystem pathological changes, pathophysiological changes occurs with end-stage liver disease that affect the anesthetic management. Hence, a comprehensive evaluation for all the systems is of paramount importance. Fortunately, in this patient, the cardiopulmonary examination was found normal, but signs of liver failure like icterus, ascites, and pallor were present on general physical examination. Battery of blood investigations were performed to find out any other systemic derangements. Thorough screening to rule out any occult infection or malignancy was performed, and fortunately, all of them were negative. USG whole abdomen showed normal sized liver with nodular margins and ports equal texture with moderate ascites. Triple phase CECT abdomen showed changes suggestive of chronic liver disease, dilated portal vein with multiple collaterals in paraesophageal region. Upper GI endoscopy showed esophageal varices and grade 2 and ligation was done for them. Interdepartmental references were done to rule out any other systemic illness and their optimization, and especially psychiatric reference was done to ensure healthy psychological status of the recipient. The patient was admitted in liver transplant ICU after location of the liver. The patient and his relatives were counseled and written and videographic consent for liver transplant surgery was taken. Fresh blood investigations were sent and were checked. Liver transplant surgery being a very challenging, long and complex challenging surgery is associated with many challenges like massive bleeding, hemodynamic instability, coagulopathies, electrolyte and metabolic shifts, hypothermia, and hence they require careful planning and preparation of OTs. We require advanced anesthesia workstations for ventilation, USG machines for vascular access. We require all ASA monitors, including bispectral index monitoring for measuring the depth of anesthesia and for temperature monitoring devices. Invasive cardiac output monitors are required to show beat-to-beat variations for invasive BP, central venous pressure, stroke volume variation, and systemic vascular resistance to guide the fluid and vasopressor supplements. Rapid infusion system devices are required to manage massive blood loss and fluid shift. Fluid warmers are required for forced air warming devices to maintain normothermia. ABG and TAG machines are required to regularly monitor and correct metabolic derangements in coagulopathies. All the necessary drugs, albumin and vasopressors were kept ready. Plenty of fluids, preferably preferably the balanced salt solutions, and 20 units of leukodepleted packed RBCs and FFPs, cryoprecipitates and platelets were kept in reserve. The recipient was shifted to dedicated liver transplant OT in sync with the start of organ retrieval. The patient was given general anesthesia and maintained on volume control mode ventilation. USG guided right IJV cannulation was done for a quadrilemon central line tube and 11.5 French hemodialysis catheter for rapid infusion. Right femoral artery and left radial artery were cannulated for invasive hemodynamic monitoring and frequent blood sampling. Balanced general anesthesia was maintained by continuous infusion of fentanyl and atracurium. Calcium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, albumin, noradrenaline and vasopressin infusions were connected and titrated according to the BIS, ABG and invasive hemodynamic monitorings. The surgery was divided into 3 distinct phases, each having its unique challenges. The first, the pre and hepatic stage, included the recipient's hepatectomy and it lasted for 4 hours. The major challenge was hemodynamic instability due to loss of the ascitic fluid and bleeding, which was managed by infusing 2 liters of balanced salt solution and 2 units of PRBC infusion. Noradrenaline and vasopressin infusions were started, regular ABG and TAG were done, and corrections were made accordingly. Next phase was the anhepatic phase, in which there was complete vascular exclusion of the liver, and it lasted for 42 minutes. Fortunately, the anticipated hemodynamic changes like decreased venous return, cardiac output and decreased BP were less marked in this patient because of, and the most likely because of the partial clamping of inferior vena cava, and the credit goes to our expert surgical team for this. There was worsening of acidosis and hypocalcemia, and to correct them, sodium bicarbonate and calcium chloride infusion rates were increased. Towards the end of the surgery, the patient was prepared for reperfusion, and potassium levels below 3.5 millimoles were achieved by infusion of 10 units of insulin in 25% dextrose and salbutamol infusion. Nebulization. Methylprednisolone 750 mg was given for immunosuppression. The third stage and the final stage of that is the reperfusion or the neohepatic phase, which included the hepatic artery anastomosis and biliary reconstruction. This stage was started with unclamping of the portal vein and lasted for 4 hours and 30 minutes. Initial period of this phase is a very critical phase, and there is risk of significant hemodynamic changes like decreased cardiac output, decreased blood pressure, decreased heart rate, arrhythmias and even cardiac arrest due to sudden release of endogenous metabolites and potassium from the preservative solutions infused in the liver, released into the systemic circulation. Hence, sodium bicarbonate and calcium gluconate and boluses of phenylephrine were given at the time of reperfusion. In this patient, reperfusion was very smooth and good graft function was evident by production of the bile and decreasing level of serum lactate, normalization of calcium levels and decreased requirements of vasopressors. These findings were also confirmed radiologically by good hepatic flow on Doppler study. The patient was then shifted to dedicated ICU along with all the monitors and was electively ventilated for a few hours and then extubated. He was kept on non-invasive ventilation intermittently for 1 day. Analgesia, graft function, coagulopathy, immunosuppression, nutrition and metabolic status were regularly monitored and taken care of. The patient's post-operative period was uneventful and he was discharged on the 15th day of admission. Now coming to the renal transplant, 2 kidneys were retrieved from a single deceased donor at SMS hospital and allocated as per state priority protocols by the SOTO. 10 end-stage renal disease patients were shortlisted as per their seniority in registration and were evaluated, and HLA typing was done on them. Based on immunologically compatibility and clinical fitness, 2 recipients, a 66-year-old female and a 44-year-old male, were selected. Both the recipients had undergone hemodialysis within last 24 hours. Their post-dialysis serum electrolytes, creatinine and body weight were assessed. Antihypertensive drugs, anti-thymocyte globulin therapy and other supportive medications were reviewed, and both the recipients were shifted in the operation theatres. Bench preparation for both the kidneys was started simultaneously. Both the patients were given general anesthesia and agents having minimal renal dependence were used. Standard ASA monitorings were instituted along with CVP monitoring. AV fistula was taken care of by avoiding peripheral lines, IV lines and blood cuff, BP cuff on that side. Balanced salt solution was used for fluid administration and it was guided by CVP, which was maintained between 12 to 15 centimeters of water. Mean arterial pressure was maintained about 90 millimeters of mercury, and vasopressors including noradrenaline and vasopressins were used as per need. Regular acid-base monitoring was done and acidosis was corrected accordingly by sodium bicarbonate. Methylprednisolone 1 gram was given during venous anastomosis as an immunomodulator, and mannitol 0.5 grams per kg was given before declamping, as it is a potent osmotic diuretic, clears free radicals and improves microcirculation. Urine production started immediately after anastomosis in both the cases. Both patients were extubated on the table and post-operative analgesia was provided using a multimodal approach, preferably paracetamol. Both recipients were subsequently transferred to the dedicated renal transplant ICU for further management and graft surveillance. Now coming on heart transplant. Although heart donation was not done in this case, but our institute has solicited 9 heart transplants and 1 combined heart-lung transplant till date. These procedures involve unique and complex challenges which have been consistently and effectively managed by our anesthesia team. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. Anupam Madam for summarizing this case.
This case stands as a heartfelt tribute to the courage of donor families and tireless teamwork of multiple departments whose united efforts turned prolonged grief into the gift of life. For the recipient, this gift is more than an organ. It is a second chance at life. They carry deep gratitude and respect for the donor family, knowing that their survival is born from another family's courage and generosity. Now, we would like to share few audio clips from deceased donor recipient in their own words.
और जब मेरा ज़्यादा उल्टी तबीयत ज़्यादा खराब रही थी तो मैं एडमिट रही थी हॉस्पिटल में। फिर मेरा 2 बार हार्ट का झटका आ गया था। फिर मेरे को तो होश भी नहीं था, मैं तो बेहोश कैसे आया हार्ट ट्रांसप्लांट का ऑपरेशन आया था। वो खत्म हो गया मेरा और इस वक्त मेरे तो काम कर रही थी, घूम रही थी। अब तो उसको काम घर जाता झाड़ू पोछा रोटी कभी काम कर रही थी। टीम में बहुत हेल्प करी, डॉक्टर बहुत हेल्प करी।
रहने वाला 39 वर्ष की युवक हूँ। मेरी 2022 में लीवर सिरोसिस की बीमारी हुई थी और 2024 में मेरा लीवर फेल हो गया, जिस वजह से मेरी फैमिली ने जब करके मुझे अस्पताल में जो भर्ती कराया, जब लीवर डोनर ना मिलने की वजह से मुझे वहाँ से एसएमएस हॉस्पिटल के एसपीटी सर्जरी विभाग में भर्ती कराया, जहाँ मेरा रजिस्ट्रेशन हुआ और जहाँ लीवर मुझे लगाएगा। आज मैं पूरी तरह स्वस्थ हूँ। मैं एसपीटी सर्जरी विभाग में ट्रांसप्लांट टीम का लीवर डोनर परिवार का आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
मेरे दोनों गुर्दे पिछले कई सालों से काम नहीं कर रहे थे और मैं डायलिसिस पर चल रहा था। मैंने एसएमएस सुपर स्पेशलिटी अस्पताल में कैरियर में अस्पताल से खूटा लेने के लिए रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाया था। गुर्दा प्रत्यारोपण सफलतापूर्वक कर दिया गया है। अब मैं स्वस्थ हूँ और पूर्ण रूप से स्वस्थ महसूस कर रहा हूँ और मेरा ट्रीटमेंट भी अब ठीक हो गया है। इसके लिए मैं आप सभी का तहे दिल से धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
Each of you to take a moment to pledge your support for organ donation by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. Please motivate your friends and family also. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Department of Anesthesia for taking us through this illustrious journey from the moment of brain death to organ retrieval, allocation and transplant. Dhananjay sir has something to say.
In my 40 year of journey of the nephrology department, I witnessed the first kidney transplant to till date. Around 90 kidney transplantation in cadaver is done. Around 850 live transplantation has been done. I am thankful to the Department of Anesthesia. We have performed a donation from a lady. Her age was 84. That is highest in the country. Secondly, we are teaching and we are giving the team to the Jodhpur Medical College, aims also to for the kidney transplantation. We are going there. So we are thankful to the anesthesia department. And for the swab transplantation, we have done swab transplantation, avian compatible transplantation. swab means simultaneously 4 transplantation. 2 patients are being transplanted simultaneously across the blood group. ABM compatible transplantation we are doing free of cost, and 100% everything is free for all the patients. And lot of the patients, they are coming from across the different part of the states and from the out of the state. So we are thankful to the Department of Anesthesia. They are helping us to conducting the transplantation. Now we are aiming for combined transplantation like liver and kidney transplantation and heart and kidney transplantation. We are aiming next year.
Invite Senior Professor, Department of Anesthesia, Dr. Reema Meena ma'am, to say a few words.
Good morning all. Good morning respected seniors, colleagues and dear friends. So as we are already, I would just like to say 2 lines. We see a lot of advanced surgeries and complicated surgeries being done all over the world and in our institute and being appreciated. But as the saying goes, besides every successful man, there is a woman. So there is no denying the fact that besides every complicated and successful surgery, there is an important role of anesthesiologist. Be the surgeon male and the anesthesiologist female, or be the surgeon female or anesthesiologist female. I just want everybody to appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Antimicrobial resistance is the need of the hour. With this, I invite Dr. Rajni ma'am, Senior Professor, Head of Department of Microbiology and Nodal Officer of the State for AMR, to present the State AMR Surveillance Report. I also invite upon to the stage dignitaries.
I thank Dr. Dhananjay to have done our job very well, and I must say that this was probably the perfect case for this kind of presentation, because this was not only a very challenging case, but also it involves 4 patients, right? One is the donor, where the anesthesia has to actually do the whole job pre-operatively. 3 recipients being operated after the organ retrieval. So all this, I think, requires a big amount of challenge for the anesthetists. And I must congratulate the anesthesia team here, who has done a wonderful job, and we are really proud to have a department which is probably the largest department in the country. Yes, Asia. A big round of applause for the whole department of anesthesia. They are doing a wonderful job, and I think they are the most hard-working people, because they cannot afford to be absent, because 6 days a week they have to come in the OT. Yeah, the medicine people can remain absent. The surgery, yes, 4 days a week we have OT, 2 days OPD, but anesthesia, they cannot afford to be even delay the surgery also. They have to come in the time. They have to go after 3 p.m. They cannot go before that also. I think they are the most hard-working people. And one more suggestion to the administration here, the SMS Medical College, is that it's very high time that we have a Department of Critical Care Medicine. I think the private medical colleges have Department of Critical Care Medicine, and still we are lacking a department which is the most important department, probably. And I don't know, I just went for examination in Kathmandu. There was one HOD from a private medical college who came there for examination of DM Critical Care Medicine. And there was nobody from SMS, because we don't have the department at all. So I would request the principal sir to start the department as soon as possible. It is very helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I would like to say something. Please call anesthesiologist. We are scientists, not anesthetists. Anesthetists are the technicians. Please. Thank you, sir.
One more. We are not anesthesiologists, we are peri-operative physicians. Before the operation, during operation and after, we are taking full care of patients. So we are peri-operative physicians.
Welcome our Honorable Principal and Controller Sir, Dr. Deepak Maheshwari Sir, to come onto the stage for release of the AMR surveillance. I also invite onto the stage Additional Principal Ma'am, Dr. Monica Jain Ma'am, Dr. Reema Meena Ma'am, our Medical Superintendent Sir, Dr. Mrinal Joshi Sir, our Convener CPC, Dr. Puneet Saxena Sir, and Senior Professor and Head of Department of Microbiology and Nodal Officer of AMR of the State, Dr. Rajni Sharma ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Our Department of Anesthesiology, I am a little confused with the nomenclature. So, is probably the largest department in our college. In country and in Asia. What to say? मुझको लगता है यहाँ पर जिस डिपार्टमेंट के बारे में बोलता हूँ वो सबसे बड़ा निकलता है. So and I think it is working in all the hospitals. So almost there are 13 or 14 parts of this department, and they are running almost 115 tables. 115 tables. They are having 65 consultants and 90 residents per year. So 76 per year. 76. So this is huge. And अभी मैं सुन रहा था head of the urology. Yes, we are thinking the same direction. We have just made a proposal for starting, say, a fellowship in the critical care in cardiac anesthesia. So cardiac anesthesia anesthesiologists are the most, I think, well versed with the hemodynamics of the body. So this is the first step, and we are preparing to start critical care fellowship in anesthesia. I think we are going to convert the SRship course to fellowship. This is my proposal to the government, and we will start this because this is very badly required. Management of critically ill patients and cardiac anesthetists and as well as ICU guys are most important in managing these patients. So our proposal is almost there, and thank you for attending this wonderful CAB. I'm sorry I'm late, but इतने सारे लोग मतलब एनेस्थीसिया का बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट है. Okay, so one point to add. Despite of all adversities, all scared and resources we don't have. So this year our Department of Nephrology and Urology produced maximum number of transplants, which is I think, a record forever. Largest ever. So I think every department is doing very good. Thank you.
So good morning everyone. Already we are late, so I would like to cut short. We were just talking about, since morning we are talking about different surgeries and various sophisticated procedures, and I would like to stress upon that we are really dealing with antimicrobial resistance, and although we had planned to present the SMS data, how much resistance is there in bacterial pathogens which are put on priority list even by WHO, but due to shortage of time, we could not display that. But I'm thankful to Principal Sir and all the additional principals and the faculty to give us this opportunity to release the first annual report of AMR surveillance produced from the state of Rajasthan. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, madam. And we'd like you, if you can circulate the copy of the hospital antibiogram to the clinical departments.
We are already doing, but we will circulate this.
So this one also. So very nice. So that the Prime Minister also spoke on the subject antimicrobial resistance.
Because we are talking about sophisticated surgeries, and with so much of AMR, our surgeries could fail if we fail to address this problem. Thank you.
my chance has come to say something. So I'll put a quick vote of thanks to all of you, especially to the anesthesiologists for producing such a great CPC. And of course, they have acknowledged each and every person, the multidisciplinary persons who are involved actively. So they are instrumental persons in not only organ retrieval, they are also putting hand-holding with the psychiatry department, with neurology, neurosurgery, and they are the instrumental person in peri-operative cases. That is most important, and sooner or later we are going to have a concrete department of critical care, which is a need of the hour for the successful transplant program. Of course, we'll start with fellowship, but then this is done. We are also thankful for Meenakshi ma'am to come and grace this occasion. We are thankful to the persons, anesthesiologists from military hospital to come here and attend this CPC. And of course, the audience. The audience was wonderful, lovely as always, and today in maximum amount. Each of us feel connected with anesthesiologists, so we are here. Thank you very much for putting up a great show. And hot tea is waiting outside with hot samosa. Please come.